Hey, welcome, Captain Ron here, and along with Diane, and I always want to say Derek. It's I know it's my age, and I'm saving words by combining Dieter and Eric, but
we expect it.
Yeah, it's so anyway, but we don't have Derek. We only have Eric, and because the other half, Dieter, is he's been on vacation, house sitting. Eric and Diane went over and visited him over in Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
He has to close up the shop and do a little debrief with the owner. He was watching a house there, so he'll be back with us next week. But we've got us, and we've got a guest tonight, and we'll bring her on in just a minute. This is Fearless Flight Live. We come to you every week at this time for anybody who has a fear of flying, for people who know somebody that has a fear of flying, or people who just like talking and visiting with us about aviation, the aviation industry, and fear of flying, and FactSet. There was just a couple of things that I was going to talk about. I saw an article this week. Did you guys fly over there on non-rev on somebody, or yeah? How were the
airline?
Yeah, with me.
Non-stop out of Phoenix.
Cool. And I saw that American, Delta, and probably United, although I didn't see United, they've cut back like almost 20% of their schedules for this summer. And so if any of you are out there flying to get the courage to go flying, you're probably still going to notice the effect sometimes, because with that there's fewer airplanes flying around, fewer reserves and things like that. So it's still they're still recovering from the post-pandemic staffing. It sounds like.
So Ron, that was the cutback coming off of summer schedule into fall, right? That was the cut. Cut coming into the fall schedule.
Yeah.
Yes. I noticed it when I put my bid in for September. For several months, I've been a guaranteed line holder, and now I'm back to targeted, which means I'll still get a line, but we have far fewer lines for the flight attendants to fly for September. Yeah. So it's back quite a bit.
But they're not furloughing or anything like that, right? It's just they're just fewer lines. They're not furloughing and laying anybody off.
No. We're not. We did not. My airline did not furlough any pilots or flight attendants at all.
Probably the first time in airline history that they cut back the schedules and nobody lost their job over it.
No, we didn't with my airline anyway. That's good.
But it kind of makes sense. I hadn't thought about it, Ron, but since their contract covering American, United, and Delta and the other guys, just like Mason Envoy's doing, so every month when the majors feed them, hey, cover this for us, and they go, oh, by the way, next month we 20% less is what we need you for, then the amount that is there for them to provide just drops at the same time the majors hand them that reduced schedule.
Yeah. We're at the mercy of what they want. Yeah.
And just a couple of announcements. If you haven't received it, you will be receiving today or tonight or somewhere. You'll receive a broadcast email, just kind of a mid-summer, end of summer update about everything that's going on. I talk about the Clear for Takeoff 201 class. I talk about the 101 classes, which I'll tell Diane and Eric about. The next one we're going to do is on September 10th. Again, we're going to do it at 6 o'clock here at the airport. Moved it up just a little bit, and that's for anybody who will be in the Phoenix area and available. And we hold that class live at the Phoenix airport and on a Southwest airplane. They're gracious enough to donate an airplane for us. And then, not to be outdone, if you don't live in Phoenix, the next morning we'll have a webinar. We call it the Clear for Takeoff 101 online webinar. And that's the same thing, except we don't have an airplane. You have to imagine you're in an airplane to get the same realism as the night before. And then the 201 class is, I have a number of people ask me, when's the next one going to be? And as you'll see in the email, the next one is on right now, because it's all on demand now, up in the cloud. And that's provided us with a lot of more benefits and flexibility, so that people can take it at any time they want to, can stay current you get accessibility that we didn't have before, a lot more content, and we can now feed into advanced classes, which we've done before, but they were pretty much restricted to Phoenix and the Los Angeles area. And in March, we tested a third location. We did one in Boston. And so that's the goal for the future, is to get more and more people in the online course in the cloud, which will then allow us to accumulate groups in various cities around the country and move or offer the 301 in more places. Not specifically, the next Clear for Takeoff 301 is going to be on September 17th. I will fly to Burbank, and we will fly from Burbank to Sacramento. So if you're one of the many people who's asked me, living in the LA area, when's the next class going to the 301, it's September 17th for you. And then the next month in October, October 22nd, we're going to have a Clear for Takeoff 301 class from Phoenix to Burbank and back. So that's what's on the agenda and current there. I've done a lot of flying this summer myself personally. Well, just over in Europe, I flew 28,000 some miles, 9 flights, and I've flown with a couple of elite coaching students since I've gotten back. But I did a lot of flying. It was interesting to fly in Europe, to book flights on other carriers. I have never done that. I've always either flown to a destination in Europe and then back, but never intra-Europe. And so that was interesting. We're fortunate we didn't get caught up in any of the strikes or the airlines that were canceling a lot of flights. We flew unimpeded, but we did see a lot of people at the airport, and it was an interesting experience. And I had an elite coaching student that I flew over with and back. And then I had another one that I flew up to Copenhagen. This was just a really grand experience. Stayed with her and her family, and we flew around over there. And I invited them to come over and visit me. So they're headed here in September. And with any luck, I will have her on our show, one of our shows here in September here, live and in person. So this all leads up to our guest tonight. And what I wanted to focus on is just more of the hard nuts and bolts of and experiences of people who really have a struggle getting over their fear of flying. And tonight I've asked a longtime follower, Lane Seaton, to join us on the air here. And we're just going to talk. She just made a trip to Oahu and then down to Maui. So Lane, if you want to join us, if you're, I won't tell them that you took this opportunity to eat your supper, because you're gracious enough to interrupt your whole life to be on the show with us. So welcome, Lane, and it's great to have you. You and I have talked just a whole bunch over the years, and we were talking about just how long we've known each other, and it's been maybe 15 years or so. So again, that's probably bad for my reputation if you're still hanging around. Flying, it may put that to question, but no, we become good friends as I have with so many people that I've gotten to know. So anyway, and I just want to, I don't want to drag this out too much, but one of the things that you did, you and I have done some work recently, and it was kind of leading up. I don't believe you had flown since the pandemic, before the pandemic, right? Before you were planning your Florida trip.
Yeah, well, it had been definitely a year since I had flown. Where we've been starting to go to Hawaii just about every year the last couple of years, and so yeah, it was more than a year since I had flown anywhere, and that trip really was okay too. And but having so much time lapse in between, I think that's where my sort of Achilles heel is that, the old fear starts to creep back in, and it really is a pain. So yeah, it had been about a year.
Yeah, and we won't be able to probably bless you with holy water or a magic wand and make that go away, but we'll talk a little bit more because so many people out there really struggle. as you've been candid enough with me to do that. And it's, you know, it really is a hijacking of your attention. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. And it's not like we don't have episodes. Eric and I were talking about, you know, every 6 months we had to go in and get a first class medical. And there's some stress associated with that, which is ironic because we don't want stress when they're measuring our blood pressure, because that's cause for grounding. And but when you start thinking about things and obsessing over them, you know, then certain behaviors come up. And in the cognitive behavioral therapy world, they're called catastrophizing, awfulizing, globalization, where we say this is affecting everything, you know, or you know, things like that. And so I thought we touch on it a little bit. And so this time the Florida trip was when you, as you got closer to that, what was that, a month ago, 2 months ago, 2 months ago, you were scheduled to do that?
Yeah, that was going to be in early July.
Oh, okay. And then what happened as you got close to that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I mean, at the time I was very relieved that we didn't end up going. My sister and I were actually going to meet down there because a really long time close family friend had suddenly passed away. And so we were going to go down there and visit with her family and things like that. And but my sister had just gotten back from the UK and got a horrible bout of COVID, for she was in bed for about a week in a hotel over by herself. So she just wasn't in any real shape to head down to Florida. So really the night before that we were supposed to go, she called and said, yeah, I don't think I should make this trip. So, but yeah, leading up to that planned trip, all the anxiety had started to come back.
Okay. So you were feeling anxiety even before you heard from your sister?
Yeah, for about a week. Yeah.
And then she's not there. And can you make any connection? You know, we talk about, you got to have a big why when you got a goal like this. You know, when you're trying to get through your fear of flying, it's got to be a really good reason if you're working on it really hard. And so do you think that affected you? The stress obviously affected you, but do you think that was, did that kind of let you off the hook? Like, okay, well, it's not as important, so I can maybe compromise on this trip?
Yeah, it definitely did, because we had planned it together and we had rented a VRBO place there together. So my immediate thought was, oh, well, we rented this place. If I was going to go on my own, I would have gotten just like a 1-bedroom place. It was sort of like logistics like that. But of course, in the back of my mind too, that night when she called, it was this big relief, like, oh, okay. Like, cause I was gearing up to try to make it through, this flight over there. And, but then a couple of days later, I really was kicking myself that I didn't just go ahead and go, because I really did want to go and visit with family over there.
Yeah. But the fact, just, and again, at the risk of overanalyzing it, which, what are we worth if we can't do that? But, when you have that out, I mean, to me, that's the perfect out for that little voice in there that says, okay, jump on it, Lane. Now we don't have to do that. And as soon as you do that, then you literally, you get a shot of dopamine, because it says, okay, we pulled that one off. And as it turns out, it sounds like it set you up for the next trip. And what was the next trip that you just got back from? We'll spoil the surprise.
Yeah, we just got back from Maui on Sunday night. We were there for a week, and it was great. We've gone many times to Hawaii, mostly to Oahu, and it was a wonderful trip. But yeah, the motivation was really wanting to be there and going with my husband, that we always go together, and he was really ready to, if he needed to go by himself if I wasn't going to go. But I didn't want to miss the trip. And I knew that if I backed out of this, that the fear that it would be so much worse, that I would be set back so much worse. So that was a big motivator to use the tools and to push through and to go.
How did
And
that all go, Lane? How did that go? Did that go well?
it went really, really well. I posted this in this group that, you know, I won't lie. You know, I tend to use some drinks and maybe a Xanax as a crutch, a little bit too much of a crutch to take the edge off. But it's all comparison, and I think maybe some of the people that follow your group, like, they'll know what I'm talking about in terms of like degrees or levels of the steps of the progress that you make. Because before, years before, I used to have to be so completely out of it, like just really, really out of it, and getting sick and just sleeping the whole time when we get there, just to go. And I didn't have to do that at all. And with this trip getting on there, I listened to the harmonizer 3 times. I planned out the trip. It's about 6 hours from Phoenix. So I literally planned out the hours of the trip and listened to the harmonizer 3 times, which was really relaxing. And then listened to a little bit of music, about a half an hour. And then I had a movie on my Kindle that I watched for 2 hours. And then, and it was great. And I posted this in the Facebook, in the comments, that I was so calm watching the movie. Like, I hadn't been awake and alert enough to actually watch a movie on a plane. And I don't know how many, probably since before I was afraid, which is literally 30 years ago. And
so let me emphasize. This is one of the things that I've mentioned her before. One of my elite students that I flew down to Cabo with in earlier in the year, she did that, and she did it in a very much more mechanical way. But I can't overemphasize how important it is to have some kind of plan for your flight. We would never, you know, Diane that never goes to work without some kind of plan. You know, it happens to be induced by the system. You know, she knows she's got to show up at a certain time, but she knows what to do and when to do and all that. And it changed. The reason we do that in the airlines is because it's important to do it. You know, it not only safety, but it makes the operation run. Eric and I, of course, you know, legendary what you do as a pilot. You got all these checklists and these flows that you do, and I can't overemphasize that having a plan like you did, even if it's simple, like I'm going to watch the listen to the harmonizer 3 times, I'm going to watch a movie and all that, it gives you somewhere to point your focus. And so I just want to acknowledge that and compliment you on that. And because I have people that come to me in the same helpless state, and they say, I can't do that. I've tried everything. And, you know, and that's globalization right there. That's awfulizing. Nothing works. Well, of course, nothing works if you say nothing's going to work. You gotta figure it out. And there are some people that magically they have an aha moment, you know, like Wendy Moy, you know, and it changes them, you know, and it sticks. But the rule is more than the exception is what you go through and other people. And that's why I thought it was really appropriate to bring you on, because I watched you in the last 2 months or so go from, oh my God, you know, I didn't think you'd ever get on an airplane again, to going to Maui, you know, over this. Okay. So when you had the Maui trip, and it went well getting over there. And you know, and you mentioned before, you weren't exhausted when you arrived like you would have been sometimes. So it made it easier to have some fun, right?
Yeah, it was just, you know, and I remember the trip last year over there as well. It was just super, super smooth. And
Yeah.
I did, you know, there and back. I did check with the flight attendants when I came on, that I was sort of nervous, and they let the pilot know. And even on the way back, Sunday night, the pilot came on and he said, you know, it's really smooth weather all the way over the Pacific. He said, we might have a little bit of bumps over California, but nothing too bad. And yeah, it was like nothing, but it was nice that he said that, but just super smooth. And so I'm just sitting there, and like I mentioned to you earlier, just like sitting in a chair, like at home. This is another thing I mentioned quickly in my post, is watching a TV show downloading a TV show that I would watch at home all the time, it was so familiar that just added an extra layer of like chill for me and comfort. I'm like, wow, like this, I feel much more comfortable during this. And so yeah,
So
it would.
the $1 million question is, you made a comment when we were talking earlier today when I invited you on the show. You said, so I'm sitting there like I'm in my living room, and I said, but you're not in your living room. There's no part of you that knows you're in your living room. You're not at 35,000 feet. And why is it why was it at that particular point in time? Whereas at another time, you definitely don't think you're in your living room. You think, oh my God, this is all going on. Who knows? That is the $1 million question. And if I could bottle that, we wouldn't do this anymore. We would just sell, bottles of elixir to people, how you could fool yourself into thinking. But that's the thing. And after 35 years, I'm convinced you got to, I have a lot of people who say, I know how the airplane operates. It's not that. It's just the thought of being in there, and I say to them, if you weren't worried about getting out of the freaking airplane, because, or, something happening, you wouldn't be worried about being trapped. So you have to know that. I mean, Eric, Diane, we know our jobs so well, particularly the emergency parts of it, so that the first thing we'll do is we'll bridge that gap of startle with procedure. And I think it's another parallel for people who are afraid to fly. You need to know a lot about takeoff, and to the point where you could almost teach the damn course, okay? Because the more you know about it, there's less opportunity for uncertainty creep in. Because as soon as uncertainty creeps in, and I can, we got a bank of questions that I've accumulated over 35 years, and they're the same. What about this? What about this? What about this? And despite the people that tell me all the time, well, I'm not really worried about the airplane crash or something like that. Oh, really? Really? So you just happen to just not like to be sitting in one place for 3 hours in an airplane at 35,000 feet. It's poppycock. You got to know more about that. You got to have a bigger depth of information. So, okay.
Ron, I want to ask Lane a quick question. Lane, did you have fun while you were over there, or were you stressing coming back the whole time you were there, or was it like 50-50?
No, that's a great question. Yeah, no, it was great, and I enjoyed it, and it was only like the night before that I started to get, the nerves started to creep in, but a lot of it, but nothing like leading up to the trip. But again, I want to emphasize, because I hadn't flown in a year, and I had, not only that, and Ron knows this, but I actually backed out of a flight. And last October, I was supposed to go over to New Jersey with my husband to go see his sister who lives over there. And the day before, they had like a big nor'easter warning on the news and the weather, and it looked horrible. And I just was freaking out. It was horrible. So I said, I can't do this. I can't go. And he ended up going alone. So it was all of that leading up to this. But no, during our trip in Maui was awesome. And it was only the night before that, some of the nerves started to creep in. And that day, again, I had a little bit of Mai Tai or whatever, which of course is horrible. Like in the morning, it's not my drink of choice. I would normally a coffee at Starbucks or something. But
okay, so stop right there. Okay, it's okay, And again, this is something we touched on. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is not me telling you that you need to go sit in the corner in the lotus position and say, That's not what mindfulness is when you say, I'm going to make a conscious choice to have a little bit of alcohol because I know it's okay to dull my brain a little bit, just to take the edge off. And same way with medications. If that's your go-to place, until you get to the point where you've now flown quite a bit, you'll know when not to do that anymore. And I honor anybody's concerns. They don't want to take medication. Anybody's concerns. They don't want to become an alcoholic and all that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a mindful decision to use some kind of medication to reduce the stress on yourself. you know.
Well, I think she did. I think she did awesome, Ron. And you know me,
totally.
if I'd been over there in Hawaii on a vacation 1 week before a check ride, I can tell you how much fun I would have had.
Yeah,
Zero.
exactly.
Zero fun. And if the only fun I might have had is if I rented a car to go drive over some surfboards in a rack just to cheer myself up. That's the only possible fun I would have had. So good for you.
And I can't have any fun the last week of November because the first week of December is when I go to CQ, which is my annual. We flight attendants once a year have to go back home, so to speak, and get tested for a whole day. And that's,
So fear of flying is nothing more than a highly specialized form of stress management, you know, and it's just got a lot of unfamiliarity to it. It has a mystique about flying, has a mystique to it. And again, I say poppycock to anybody who says, I'm not worried about the airplane crashing. That's BS. If you weren't worried about the thing crashing, or you weren't worried about you crashing, having a breakdown on the airplane, you wouldn't be afraid to fly. Okay. And it's curious as to the same person, you know, you can have one experience where you can't manage your attention, and then you can have another one where you totally do manage your attention, or at least with much greater results there. So let's bring you back home here, because as you got home, because I want to get to the bottom of this and talk about some things that did come up for you. So when you're coming home, you just take us from the flight. You got on the flight, you're feeling pretty good.
You're saying coming home, what it was?
Yeah, back to Phoenix.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you, I was a little more nervous than going over, and honestly, I have no idea why. Like it wasn't bumpy or anything. It was just me. Who knows? I don't know, but I was, it took me. I'll just say it took me a little longer to sort of chill out, while I was sitting there, but then it was fine. And I did the same routine as I did over there, listening to the harmonizer, and I watched a different movie, and, looking at just the timing too, of like where they show you the map of sort of where you are and the time, getting back. And I got up and I talked with some of the flight attendants too, and chatted with them. So that helped a bit. And that was mostly it. And then it was always felt a little bit more comfortable when we got over to California, and it wasn't really bumpy. The only thing that, and I wrote this in my post, that made me, sort of nervous, or I'm like, okay, I don't like this, but it was so smooth. It was getting dark when we arrived at Phoenix, like about 8 o'clock, but it was around 7:30ish. And I guess there was those kind of storm.
Is two nights ago, right?
Yeah, Sunday night. So
And anybody who lives in Phoenix on Sunday night knows we had booga monsoons come through.
Oh God, yeah. The clouds were really weird. It was like this sort of hazy. It was very odd. It was like we, got into this weird cloud. And so we stayed in that for about like 20 minutes, and I just couldn't see a thing. And I was like, okay, I don't like this. And I looked out a couple times, and I'm like, all right, okay, just sit back. And, but it was so smooth. I kept waiting for like, okay, if there's going to be bumps or whatever, and there weren't. And I sat back and I kept, thinking, it's just uncomfortable. It's not dangerous. It's not dangerous at all. It's like you're on a road in a car. And it's not dangerous. It's just, it can be uncomfortable a bit. And just, I kept thinking of that. And then it was,
you're coming back from Hawaii into Phoenix. Okay. It's sunset, and there's monsoons over there. If you didn't have radar, what would you think when you looked out in the front of the airplane?
I'd be a little worried.
Exactly.
I'd be a little worried if I couldn't see through it. I'd be going, especially with no light to judge it with.
It's amazing. You can have the most beautiful clouds in the world, but the thicker they are, when you're down lower and behind one of them, it's black in there in the middle of the day, because there's a shadow being cast by the cloud itself. Yeah. It's a total mind trip. And when I was flying airplanes that could go high but didn't have weather radar, oh my God, we were like blind people trying to find our way through there using limited abilities by the air traffic controller to keep us out of the crap. I mean, it's the most vulnerable I've ever been. When I got radar and I found somebody who could teach me how to use that, I thought, this is way cool. And that's why you can't, if you've never seen that, if you've never been up there, I wish that the flight tracker, I wish they could put the radar display up there on occasion. So people could see he's not going through the red spots. He's going around it, or you could see there is no red spot. It's just a bunch of clouds, even though you're bouncing around. There may be a red spot behind you after you go through that in 15 minutes, but right now everything is cool. But I just wanted to point out for everybody, it's perfectly understandable at your level of being able to, comfort yourself. Why, when it gets dark and it gets black, and did you see any lightning or anything like that?
Not at all. And
Okay.
and what he said was that he was that the Phoenix airport had actually directed him around a little bit of the storms. So he was like, might be a few minutes late, but that was about it. So I really appreciated that too, that he came on and did that.
Yeah. And Eric, why would they, what's it like when you get in the area of Phoenix and you got a thunderstorm that builds out over the west and then it moves out over the east, or vice versa? What goes on, from an air traffic control point of view?
So he's trying to move lots and lots of airplanes through the diminishing holes, and wonder where you are in the line, and you don't want to go anywhere you don't want to go. And he's got lots of little airplanes coming in. So it's, as long as he has the ability to work with that, you're good. But if not, you may request a hold depending on your fuel. And then if it gets to a point where they can't allow you in, you're not going to just go, oh, well, I'm going to penetrate that weather. You're going to probably go to Tucson with all the other guys and come back. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even just that. It's if that thunderstorm starts over the east, the winds are going to be coming from the east. You're going to land to the west in Phoenix. If in the course of that thunderstorm, if that one moves or another one develops and it moves over the airport to the west, now they got to land everybody to the west. So now all those airplanes that were being vectored to land from the west or to the east have got to turn around, and they've got to have a place for them, and they already had limited places. So that's how we get to what Eric was describing: possible holding, possible diversions to other airports.
And that's as Ron said, that's a nightmare for the controllers when they're stacking up, and then we call that turning the airport around. When they're stacking up and they have to turn the airport around, that makes solving their puzzle infinitely more complicated.
Yeah. Because you got people that are going the wrong way. You can't just drive somebody else into them, and so it's the most phenomenal thing that air traffic control does when they're under pressure like that. Pilots make terrible controllers. I, for one, would never want their job, but they do a bang up job doing that. Okay, so you get there, you land, and you weren't in a bucket by the time you landed, right? You weren't an emotional puddle. You did okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go and we'll be very, very diplomatic about what we talk about the next part, about the impact on your relationship of this thing. So you're feeling, I'm going to cut to the short.
And Ron, do you want me really quickly, do you want me to just give quick context of how this started, or?
Absolutely. Okay. This is really why I wanted you to come on, because this isn't just your issue. This is, if somebody loves you and they're in any kind of relationship with you, I don't care how patient they are. I don't care. They can be like Job. I don't care how good they are. Sooner or later, it's going to piss them off,
Yeah.
And when that happens, now you're in a whole new area of psychology. It's no longer about fear of flying. It's about, after all I've done for you, I call it the codependent war cry. So anyway, if I haven't stolen your thunder.
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, I just wanted to, so I so appreciate, you letting me on and to be able to share this with you guys and everybody. No, just for me, just in this, how it started with the flying is literally 30 years ago. I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but because I used to, fly everywhere all the time, no problem. I thought it was super cool. And then it was like around 92, I was just finishing up college. So I was in my 20s, in my mid 20s. I had two flights sort of close together in the summer going back east from California. And both of them, one to Chicago was a red eye, and another one going to Boston. And they both were pretty, I don't think it was dangerous, but I would say probably moderate turbulence, and never experienced that before. And it really was sort of scary for me. And I remember them both still really vividly. I woke up from that red eye going to Chicago. It was in a really bad rainstorm. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Because I obviously I was comfortable enough to get on a red eye and sleep. But we landed and it was fine. But literally just those two flights 30 years ago flipped the switch for me. And
let me just comment real quick, okay? I can't prove any of this, but here, so look at this. This is a common theme. So you're in your 20s, you're close to transitioning to a different time in your life, okay? That's stressful, whether we acknowledge it or not. You have a flight on top of this, okay? And the flight has some weather and it has turbulence. Nothing that you haven't seen before, but not the way you're wired in that moment, and this, who knows the stories that you were telling yourself and all that, and it makes an imprint. And I love the way you said it throws a switch. It throws a biological switch and it starts pumping. And now it draws all of your attention to the feelings that you're having in the moment. And you are wired for here comes the fun. For how many years was it after that?
Yeah, it's been 30, but what I want to say is that it's been a journey, and I've been for many years, just up until I think COVID. I was so much better after working a lot with you, Ron. I hardly had any pre-anxiety or anything. We went to Japan, we went to Paris and Rome, went to Hawaii again, a lot of places, and I'm so much better. There was like back maybe in 06, 07, I was grounded for 2 years because I just couldn't deal with it. So I took the train everywhere. I took the train to Florida from California and up to New England. But then I was able
to. A lot of train stories.
So, yeah. So I've been through a lot of it, but like I said, it's this last trip was so much better, and your mind just plays tricks on you. So for me, my goal and my plan is to just really fly a lot more often, because I feel like if I do that, I can make huge headway, and I can do so much better.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
And you will.
Absolutely.
So you opened the letter to me last night. You said, when's the next 201? Well, I addressed that earlier on. It's on now, constantly. Okay. And I'm going to highly emphasize and support you in saying that, I think you do that. And if you can do that, other people out there should take your lead, because it helps to be engaged with somebody for the long term. It's been, it's been a 30-year journey. People wait on average 10 years before they even think about doing anything of it. I had a person who had a 15-minute coaching call scheduled for tomorrow, and she called me, or she emailed me and said, I'm going to wait until I'm going to pick a date, the 24th, because I'm flying on the 25th, but I'm working. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know what level of anxiety she's in, but you don't wait until the day before if you don't have to. So the point is, do it early, stay with it. And that's what I'm going to support you in doing, and then I mentioned, we've got Wendy Moy, who broke the mold and started her own little flights out there in LA. And we're going to try to do that in other areas like Phoenix, get people connected in the sense of community, because the last thing I want to do is bring it back to, your relationship with Chris, your husband. You came back feeling pretty good all in all about what you'd accomplished, and what did he remind you of? How imperfect you were. and don't let me put words in Chris's mouth, but basically he had a different perspective. right? And how did that impact you? How did you feel?
I just, it really bummed me out and really was upsetting. This was yesterday morning, going back to work, and he just was really disappointed that I still leaned on, the crutches that I did.
Crutches. Yeah, that's an interesting choice of words.
Meaning have, some drinks and things, and was really disappointed, and told me that. And I just, it's upsetting because I'm like, well, I mean, before you needed to roll me off the plane, or you needed to, it's like go or whatever. And but by degrees, I was so much better. And so I wish I had gotten that encouragement, and I didn't. And so it's hard.
He wants you to take 2 ibuprofens and make it all go away the next day. That sounds like a total guy thing. I mean,
yeah. And it's not just a guy thing. It's a person who doesn't know what it's like to be that way. And we're not here to cast aspersion on Chris. What I want to point out is that's what goes on. And in every relationship, it can be a challenge because because he's been supportive, and encourage you and stuff like that. But everybody's got a limit, and it's tough. So that's another reason why the sense of community that you get, whether it's with us or anybody else that does this, you need that. You need that support so that you don't get turned by a bad experience in your relationship, or somebody just isn't there to support you in the way that you really need to be supported in that moment. And that's another case for staying engaged with us and the shows and all that. And we firmly believe that, and we've seen that over and over again. So I want to just say in closing, you're doing great.
Yeah, we think you're awesome.
Great.
And not only that, your conjecture that did you qualify for the worst fearless flyer ever? You busted out of the qualifying heats. You're nowhere near the medal round. You're completely outcompeted and outclassed by many others.
By dozens.
You have no hope of getting over that bar ever.
Yeah, we're sorry you didn't come in first.
Did I tell you that I lived in Japan for 5 years during this time? So from 94 to 99. So I had to fly back like twice a year. And that was quite difficult.
It doesn't make sense because we don't have a context. Even the people who experience it like you, sometimes there's just no context. Why can I be okay and then not be okay? It's just the mystery of the brain, and it's fascinating and confounding in the same breath. So anyway, I want to thank you for coming on. We didn't get to any questions or anything like that, but I do want to thank you. I hope it's been helpful, because I've just noticed more than ever lately that the people I'm working with, some are longtime folks that I've been with, and they flew, and the pandemic definitely screwed everybody up. It just. And again, it's another layer of stress. And who knew, and we're, if we're going into a downturn in the economy, that probably will affect some people's plans to fly. And so there's another potential. And that, life is like that. It's up and down and up and down. And nowhere does it show up more than in the problem with resilience over being afraid to fly. So anyway, thanks a lot, Lane, for joining us tonight.
Awesome job.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. And watch this again, and watch you. Don't listen to me or any of us. Watch you on this. Watch the replay and just let it soak in the words that you've used tonight, and how and the confidence that you displayed with us, and the self-satisfaction. That's what you need to do. You need to focus on you and just keep feeding that wolf. The old Native American story about there's a hungry wolf or an angry wolf and a well-adjusted wolf, and theoretically they both reside in us. And which one is the one that rules out? The one you feed the most. So if you feed the anger or the fear, it's going to be the one that shows up all the time. So anyway, Diane, thanks again. Eric,
Thank you.
Thanks. And again, Lane, appreciate it. And everybody out there, thanks for joining us again this week. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Toodaloo. Bye-bye.
See ya. She was awesome.